Douglas Macgregor downplays the likelihood of a Third World War, but expresses concern about the potential for a localized conflict to escalate regionally. He sees the challenge in the irreconcilable positions of Mr. Netanyahu's government and Hamas and its supporters. Macgregor suggests that in the short term, the best hope is for a ceasefire to provide breathing space, but he notes a lack of willingness from either side to relent. He leaves the question open, pondering the possibility of a regional war and prompting further exploration of the reasons behind it. Douglas Macgregor observes that the current circumstances differ significantly from those in 1973, the last time Israel faced a major war. While there have been instances of fighting in southern Lebanon and sporadic conflicts since 1982, they haven't reached the scale of the 1973 war. Macgregor notes the potential for the current situation to escalate, but he highlights the changes in the region. He points out that not only are the Arab states more capable, but there are also new technologies at play. Moreover, Iran, and particularly Turkey, are now standing on the sidelines, and their potential involvement could have severe consequences for both Israel and the United States. Douglas Macgregor suggests that the Biden administration is likely aiming to contain the conflict, albeit belatedly. He criticizes the diplomatic efforts, asserting that wherever Secretary Blinken has been involved, the situations have worsened. And Macgregor expresses a serious concern about the lack of leadership in the White House, especially in situations where historical presidents would personally intervene to set limits on Israeli actions or those of their opponents. He compares the current situation to a blank check given by President Biden to Israel, drawing parallels to the mistake made by the German emperor in 1914, when he provided a similar blank check to the Emperor of Austria-Hungary, leading to serious consequences. Macgregor fears that without clear leadership, the conflict may escalate rapidly and spiral out of control. Douglas Macgregor provides historical context, mentioning blame on both sides for the current situation. He refers to the Camp David Accords, recalling a discussion between Menachem Begin, then Prime Minister of Israel, and President Said out of Egypt. Macgregor notes that Begin to offer control of Gaza to Egypt, stating that it was a tinderbox, a catalyst for conflict, and that Israel didn't want it. However, Said declined the offer, citing two reasons. Firstly, his own society was fragile. Douglas Macgregor continues his analysis, stating that President Said was not comfortable admitting a couple of million more people, as it could destabilize his own population. He notes that this attitude is not unusual in the Arab world, and similar sentiments can be found in Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Jordan, and other countries. However, Macgregor introduces another dimension, explaining that if Sadat had accepted control of Gaza from Menachem Begin during the Camp David Accords, it would have weakened the argument for a Palestinian state. He emphasizes that maintaining the dream of a Palestinian state is in the interest of the Arabs in the region because it serves as a way to contain, weaken, and suppress Israel as a major power. Macgregor urges understanding this background while acknowledging that living in Gaza has been challenging. Chuck Dugbust. Macgregor describes Gaza as being referred to as the largest open-air prison or concentration camp globally, acknowledging the grimness of this description. He adds that many Arab Christians in Gaza, primarily Orthodox and Roman Catholic, have also become targets and casualties, despite not being associated with Hamas. Doe Margaret points out that Israel is currently focused on rooting out and destroying Hamas, and civilians, including Arab Christians, can become casualties if they don't evacuate. He expresses concern that there is no intervention to stop the situation and emphasizes that Mr. Netanyahu holds significant control over Israel's actions and, by extension, the United States' influence. Macgregor notes the shift in power dynamics, highlighting that Israel's influence on Capitol Hill and American politics now holds considerable sway, suggesting that meaningful change may only occur when Mr. Netanyahu, who decides to end the current situation, potentially opening the door to the regional war being discussed. Douglas Macgregor delves into the historical perspective, noting that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton believed America's mission in the world was to be an engine of economic prosperity. They envisioned that by building up the U.S. economy and showcasing success, other nations would want to emulate the American model. However, Macgregor argues that this vision was discarded during and after World War II when the U.S. transformed into an imperial state. He acknowledges that the shift was influenced by the extensive destruction during World War I, leaving the Soviet Union as the principal winner in terms of territory and power. Macgregor suggests that the U.S. had to fill the vacuum for Japan and Germany, leading to the gradual expansion of its global presence, including the establishment of 800 military bases. Douglas Macgregor examines the mass, but pointing out that as the U.S. expanded imperial terms, it simultaneously hollowed out its economy. He attributes this to the ruling elites who, seeking profit, shifted the manufacturing base overseas, particularly to countries like China with cheap labor. Macgregor notes that China is now facing economic challenges, partly because cheap labor is no longer as readily available and some manufacturing operations have moved to other parts of Southeast Asia. While guarding the United States, Macgregor expresses concern about the destruction of the energy sector, highlighting that it was traditionally one of the country's strong suits in economic terms. He implies that the neglect of the energy sector has weakened a crucial aspect of the U.S. economic landscape. Douglas Macgregor discusses the erosion of the United States' capabilities in various sectors, including the energy sector, agriculture, and high-tech manufacturing. He argues that the country's former strengths, such as its productive agrarian sector and leadership in high-tech manufacturing, were foolishly outsourced to other countries. And Macgregor emphasizes the need to reverse these trends, suggesting that Donald Trump sought to address these issues during his presidency. However, he criticizes the current administration for taking the opposite path, doubling down on what he considers to be detrimental decisions, turning to the potential impact of the war. Macgregor explores a worst-case scenario. He speculates that if Iran becomes involved in the conflict, given the substantial naval presence in the Persian Gulf, Indian Ocean, and the Mediterranean, the situation could escalate, but he remains uncertain about the specifics. Douglas Macgregor outlines potential consequences in a worst-case scenario, expressing absolute certainty that the Straits of Hormuz will be shut down if the conflict escalates. He further speculates on the possibility of Egypt aligning itself with other Arab states against Israel, which could result in the loss of the Suez Canal. Macgregor points out additional critical factors, such as the potential impact on oil pipelines coming through Azerbaijan and Turkey, offshore drilling in the Mediterranean, and oil exports from Libya and Egypt. He describes this as catastrophic warning that it could lead to oil prices skyrocketing to $200 a barrel. A far worse scenario than current predictions of perhaps $100 a barrel. Douglas Macgregor speculates on the potential consequences of escalated conflict, emphasizing that if certain events unfold, it could lead to a drastic increase in oil prices reaching $200 a barrel. He acknowledges the uncertainty surrounding the situation, noting that various scenarios could unfold. Douglas Macgregor briefly references his investments in digital currency without delving into the topic. He then underscores the undesirable nature of a potential war, emphasizing that rational individuals worldwide do not desire such an outcome. Macgregor points out that even China, heavily reliant on resources from Africa and the Middle East, would prefer a negotiated settlement to prevent disruptions in the transportation of essential goods due to a major war involving the U.S. Navy. He mentions a recent significant argument in the United Nations where the public arena criticizes the disregard for established rules of war. Macgregor, however, contends that in an existential fight, such as the one the Israelis perceive, rules become less relevant. He acknowledges that war is war, and once it becomes existential, the fight becomes equally existential for the Arabs, Turkey, and Iranians, creating a complex problem. Douglas Macgregor suggests that the stability of fiat currency may be called into question, particularly issues with the banking system persist. He references financial experts like Lynn Alden and Alastair MacLeod, who express concerns about the fragility of the banking sector. Macgregor highlights ongoing problems in the top 10 banks in the United States, emphasizing that if any